I'm Marcus Hill.
And I'm Elena Reyes.
7%. That's what one retiree's advisor got him last year. The S&P 500 was up 17. He called Dave Ramsey to find out if he should fire the advisor, and the answer Ramsey gave him sounds right, until you're the one drawing income from a portfolio.
So, what the active versus index debate actually says, in plain English, and the question both Dave Ramsey and the index fund crowd are getting wrong if you're within 10 years of retirement, because the scoreboard they're arguing over isn't the one you're on.
First, the call, The Ramsey Show, December 2025. A retiree calls in to say his advisor got him a 7% return last year. The S&P 500 was up almost 18. He wants to know if his advisor is doing a bad job. Dave Ramsey's answer, paraphrased, if you're in an aggressive growth fund, it should be substantially outperforming the S&P, and your advisor's job is to show you funds that beat the index. Two ideas in that answer. First, aggressive growth should beat the index. Second, picking outperforming funds is the job you're paying an advisor for. Both ideas sound right. Both have problems.
The first idea is wrong on the data. The second idea is wrong on the timing. Let's take them one at a time.
What Ramsey says, an active manager in an aggressive growth fund should beat the S&P substantially. What the data says, and we're going to walk through the data in a second, is that beating the S&P is not what most active managers do, even the ones running aggressive growth funds, especially over the time frames you care about. Every year, S&P Dow Jones Indices publishes a report called SPIVA, short for S&P Indices versus Active. They measure how many actively managed mutual funds beat their benchmark over time horizons that matter to long-term investors. The year-end 2025 report just came out. Here's what the year-end 2025 numbers actually look like. Over the last 1 year, 79% of active U.S. large-cap funds underperformed the S&P 500. Over 3 years, 67%. Over 5 years, 89%. And over 20 years, the time frame that actually matters for a retirement portfolio, 93% underperformed. 2025 was the 16th consecutive year in which most active large-cap managers lagged the S&P 500 16 years in a row. This isn't a bad season, it's a pattern.
So, on the first part of what Ramsey said, that aggressive growth should be beating the S&P substantially, the data doesn't back him up. Beating the index isn't what most active funds do. The index fund crowd is right about that. Quick question while we're here. Drop your answer in the comments. Are you measuring your portfolio against the S&P 500? Stay with us. What comes next changes how you think about that question. Let us show you what this looks like with real numbers. Consider this hypothetical. Patricia, 67, recently retired, $800,000 across a handful of actively managed mutual funds recommended by her advisor. Her 2025 return, 7%. She watched the S&P 500 do almost 18 and asked the question Ramsey's caller asked, "Am I paying for underperformance?" If you've watched a 17% index print on the screen while your statement says 7, that feeling is real. We understand it. $11,000 of return Patricia didn't see on a number she could have collected just by holding the boring index fund. I'm paying for underperformance. That's the line. And on the narrow question, did your fund beat the index this year? The data says she's probably right.
But here's the math Patricia hasn't been told. Over 5 years, 89% of active U.S. large-cap funds underperformed the S&P 500. So if Patricia fires her advisor and switches to picking different active funds, the odds her next advisor's funds beat the index over the next 5 years are about 11%, worse than a coin flip, and that's before you count the cost of switching. So if Patricia's question is, did my fund beat the index, the honest answer is, probably not, and switching probably won't fix it. But that question, did my fund beat the index, is the wrong question for Patricia, and we're going to show you why. Everything we just covered, Ramsey, the SPIVA data, the question Patricia is asking, all of it is a debate about accumulation, about how much your portfolio grows, about the score on the right side of the spreadsheet. But once you stop adding money and start taking it out, once you're retired or within 10 years of it, the question changes. You're not playing the accumulation game anymore. You're playing the distribution game, and the distribution game has a different scoreboard.
The question is no longer did I beat the index. The question is did I survive the wrong decade? Because in distribution, the wrong decade can end a retirement that looked safe on paper. Meet Ron. Consider this hypothetical. Ron, 67, retired in January 2000, $1 million, all of it in an S&P 500 index fund, the cheapest, most disciplined choice the index fund crowd would recommend. He's planning to draw 4% a year, inflation adjusted, the textbook retirement plan.
Here's what happens. The S&P 500 peaks in early 2000, drops 49% through the dot-com crash, recovers, drops again in 2008, 57% off the previous peak. With dividends reinvested and adjusted for inflation, the S&P 500 didn't recover its January 2000 value until roughly 13 years later. That's the lost decade. If you're working and contributing during that decade, the lost decade is a gift. You're buying shares cheaper every year. The math compounds in your favor when the market recovers. But Ron isn't contributing. Ron is selling every year to pay his bills. And every share he sells in 2002 and 2008 is a share he can't sell after the recovery. So Ron does the textbook thing. He owns the index. He keeps fees low. He doesn't try to beat the market. He follows the advice Berger and the index fund crowd would give him. And his retirement still gets cut short, not because the index was wrong, but because nobody warned him about the order in which the returns arrive.
This is what we mean by the wrong decade. The S&P 500 averaged a healthy long-term return over Ron's retirement. But the order, bad years first, recovery later, wrecks the retiree who has to sell shares to live. Beating the index or not beating it isn't the variable that mattered. The order of returns was.
If "Did you beat the S&P" isn't the right scoreboard for someone in Ron's seat, what is? The scoreboard for distribution looks like this. 3 buckets. Now, what you need this year and next. Soon, your guaranteed income floor. Social Security, pensions, fixed index annuity income riders, the money the market can't take away from you. Later, the market money, sized to what you can actually leave alone for 10 or more years. Ron didn't lose his retirement because he picked the wrong fund. He lost it because all of his money was in the later bucket, and a retiree drawing income can't afford that. So here's where we land. Dave Ramsey is right that you should know what you own. He's wrong that beating the index is the goal. The data has said so for 16 years running. The index fund crowd is right that most active managers don't beat the index. They're wrong if they tell you that owning the index alone is a retirement plan. We think the real scoreboard for retirement isn't whether your portfolio beat the S&P last year. It's whether your structure means you never have to sell equities at the wrong moment. That's the question almost no one in this debate is asking. And it's the only one that matters once you stop adding money to the pile. If this was useful, subscribe.
Join us again next time on Anchor for more retirement news in plain English.
Thanks for watching.